used to think nothing could surprise me after 70 years of living, but sometimes it takes the smallest, most ordinary object to rip your world apart. For me, it was a lunchbox. A simple plastic container I slipped into my leather bag that morning in Boston, never imagining that by noon it would feel heavier than a tombstone. My name is Margaret Hale. I built Hale Pharmaceuticals from the ground up after my husband died in a car accident 3 decades ago. I was 37, a widow with a 10-year-old son and nothing but grit. Today, that boy is Andrew, my pride, my only child now, the chief financial officer of our company. Everything I did every sleepless night, every dollar reinvested was for him. And when Andrew married Sophia, bright, elegant, and endlessly polite, I thought my family had finally found balance again. That Monday began like so many others. The clatter of pans in the kitchen, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the machine, Sophia's laughter, mixing with the scrape of cutlery. She moved gracefully between the stove and the counter, her long hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, packing lunch for Andrew, and kindly for me. She had a way of making the ordinary feel thoughtful. "You shouldn't eat takeout, Mom," she teased. "It's not good for you." I smiled. It warmed me to think she cared for me as much as she did for my son. I left for the office briefcase in one hand, that lunchbox in the other. My morning meetings were routine, quarterly forecasts, new regulatory hurdles, the usual chorus of spreadsheets and anxious managers. By noon, the boardroom buzzed with small talk. I sat down, opened my bag, and pulled out my lunch. The box was larger than usual, but I didn't think twice. Sophia sometimes swapped containers when she ran out of clean ones. The moment I lifted the lid, a ripple of laughter filled the room. Tiny crystals clung to the rim, glittering under the fluorescent lights like sugar on a cocktail glass. Mrs. Hale, one of the younger analysts, joked, "Are you drinking margaritas at lunch?" I chuckled, shaking my head. It looked absurd, almost festive. But something in me hesitated. I carried the box across the room to Joseph Grant, my oldest friend. Joseph had been a respected surgeon before retiring and now consulted for Hale Pharmaceuticals. "Look at this," I said lightly. "Sophia must think Andrew works so hard he deserves dessert on his chicken." I expected his booming laugh. Instead, he froze. His hand trembled as he touched the rim, rubbed the crystals between his fingers, and brought them to the light. The color drained from his face. His eyes locked on mine, sharp and urgent. Then in a voice so low only I could hear, he whispered words that shattered me. "Margaret, listen carefully. Don't waste a second. You must get Andrew to the hospital. If you don't, he won't survive." The room fell silent around us. I felt the air thicken my pulse, hammering in my ears. A lunchbox, my daughter-in-law's thoughtful gesture, suddenly looked like a weapon. And for the first time in years, I was terrified I might lose the only thing I had left in this world, my son. Joseph didn't let me argue. He seized the container with a grip that belied his age and marched me down the hall past startled employees toward his office. His voice was clipped urgent. "I'll call Ethan," he muttered. Dr. Ethan Carr, a toxicologist he once trained with now at Harvard Medical Center. Within minutes, Ethan agreed to run an immediate analysis. I watched Joseph pack the lunch into a sealed bag as though it were a bomb. The drive to the hospital blurred before my eyes. Boston's streets bustled as usual, taxis, honking students with backpacks crossing against the light. But to me, the city looked unreal, like a stage set behind glass. My hands clutched my phone. I wanted to call Andrew, but he was in a meeting with investors. If I interrupted him every time I felt anxious, he'd never forgive me. And yet Joseph's words, "he won't survive," echoed with every heartbeat. At the toxicology lab, Dr. Carr met us in his white coat. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He slid the container under sterile lights, his gloved fingers steady. Minutes ticked by like hours as machines hummed. Then he looked up, his expression grave. "Mrs. Hale, this isn't sugar, it's thallium." The word cut through me like ice. Thallium, an old poison rare, almost forgotten, but deadly even in tiny doses. Dr. Carr explained, his voice clinical but urgent. "It attacks nerves, bones, hair follicles. Victims often mistake it for stress or exhaustion." I swallowed hard as the memories rushed in, Andrew rubbing his temples at dinner, complaining of stomach cramps, brushing strands of hair from his suit jacket with a nervous laugh. I had waved it off, told him to rest, to drink chamomile tea. My throat closed as guilt surged up like bile. Dr. Carr continued, "Repeated exposure could be catastrophic. If your son has been eating food laced with this, he's already at serious risk." I felt the ground tilt. This wasn't some careless accident. This was precise, hidden, and patient. A cruel hand had turned a simple meal into a weapon. My chest tightened as questions crashed in my mind. Who would do this? Why Andrew? I closed my eyes and saw his boyish grin, the pride in his eyes, when he signed his first big deal. My Andrew, the reason I had survived widowhood, the reason I still woke up every morning. I pressed my hand to my heart, whispering to myself as though a prayer, "I won't let him be taken from me. Not like this." The ride home from Harvard Medical Center felt like an eternity. The city lights blurred through the windshield as Joseph's warning, replayed in my mind, fused now with Dr. Carr's verdict. Thallium. Not stress, not overwork. A poison, deliberate and patient, inching toward my son's heart. I sat in the back seat, clutching my handbag like it could anchor me to sanity. When I finally stepped into the silence of my townhouse, one thought consumed me. If someone wanted Andrew dead, then I had to know why. There was only one man I trusted with questions of money and legacy, Patrick Doyle, my attorney of nearly 20 years. Patrick was more than counsel. He was the quiet steward of my life's work, the one who had guided me through mergers, contracts, and estate planning. I called him before dawn. My voice shook. "Patrick, I need to see you. Today." By noon, I was in his office, the smell of old leather and ink greeting me like an old friend. Patrick adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, concern flickering across his face. "Margaret, you look pale. What's happened?" I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the folder of lab results across his desk. His eyes scanned the pages, his jaw tightening with each line. "Thallium," he whispered. "My God." I leaned forward, my voice low, urgent. "Patrick, pull up my will. All of it. Every clause." He hesitated, then reached for a thick binder from his cabinet. The pages whispered as he flipped through them until his hands stilled. "Margaret," he said carefully, "you left clear instructions. If you pass before Andrew, your estate is divided between him and Sophia. But if Andrew dies first..." He paused, looking at me over the rim of his glasses. "Then Sophia inherits everything. The company, the properties, the $500 million. The air left my lungs. I had written those clauses years ago thinking I was protecting family unity, ensuring Sophia would never feel like an outsider. Now those words looked like a loaded gun pointed at my son. Patrick lowered his voice. "There's something else. I wasn't going to mention it, but you need to know. In the past 6 months, Sophia has called me repeatedly. She asked about probate timelines, transfer of shares, even tax shelters in the event of Andrew's untimely passing." I froze, bile rising in my throat. The image of Sophia in my kitchen that morning flashed before me, her smile, her gentle tone as she packed our lunches. It felt suddenly staged, like a mask stretched over something darker. Patrick leaned back, eyes narrowing. "And one more thing. A colleague at the Boston Bar Association told me he saw her dining twice with a man named Victor Kane. You know the name? He's been investigated for market manipulation, shady buyouts. A predator circling the pharmaceutical industry for years." The room tilted. Victor Kane, my rival, my nightmare. And now connected to my daughter-in-law, my heart pounded as puzzle pieces began to align in a picture I never wanted to see. Andrew sick for months. Sophia ever attentive. The will her key to everything, and Victor Kane lurking in the shadows. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep myself steady. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of betrayal pressing from every direction, and a mother's certainty settled over me like iron. This was no accident. This was a plan. I left Patrick's office with my heart thundering like a war drum. The ink on that will felt like poison itself. My own signature had armed Sophia with motive enough to bury my son. Yet when I returned home that evening, there she was on the porch, bathed in the warm glow of lantern light, her hair neatly tied back, a porcelain smile on her lips. She rose the moment she saw me. "Mom, you're just in time," she said sweetly. "Andrew and I are hosting a small benefit dinner for the Children's Hospital next week. I've already confirmed the mayor's attendance. You'll give the opening speech, won't you?" Her voice was honey, her eyes full of admiration, and for a moment I almost faltered. Could this gracious young woman truly be plotting the death of my son? The dissonance tore at me, logic screaming one truth, my heart desperate for another. At the dinner that Friday, Sophia moved like a swan across the ballroom. She greeted guests with perfect poise, kissed Andrew's cheek with tender pride, even guided me gently to my seat when my knees ached. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes. "The future of Hale Pharmaceuticals," one columnist whispered, "is in good hands with Sophia." I forced a smile, my chest burning. They saw a saint. I saw shadows. But I wasn't alone. My assistant, Emily Carter, had been with me for years. Sharp-eyed, fiercely loyal, a woman who never ignored details. One afternoon, as we organized files in my office, she hesitated. "Mrs. Hale," she said softly, "have you noticed how often Mrs. Sophia is on her phone?" I looked up. "She's young," I deflected. "Everyone her age is glued to a screen." Emily's brows knitted. "It's not just the frequency. She deletes her messages the moment she reads them." I happened to glance over. Once there were strings of numbers, nothing else. No names. A chill ran through me. Numbers, codes. I remembered Patrick's words, "dinners with Victor Kane." My throat tightened. The next morning, I tested Sophia. Over coffee, I mentioned casually Patrick called yesterday. He reminded me of the charitable foundation idea I've been toying with. "Imagine donating half the company to research grants." Sophia's hand froze on her spoon. It was just a flicker, a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Her knuckles whitened, then she quickly laughed. "That's noble of you, Mom." "Truly." She stirred her coffee again, this time too quickly. The clink of metal against porcelain, sharp as a warning bell. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling while Boston's traffic murmured outside my window. I wanted to believe Sophia's warmth was real, that her laughter with Andrew wasn't rehearsed. But Emily's quiet observations gnawed at me. Patrick's revelations weighed on me, and Dr. Carr's voice haunted me. She had built the perfect facade, a model wife, a beloved daughter-in-law, a public darling. But I knew now facades crack under pressure, and I would be the one to apply it. After that morning at the breakfast table, when Sophia's spoon trembled just long enough for me to notice, I knew it was time to stop doubting and start acting. A mother's heart wants to believe, but a mother's instinct refuses to ignore. I could no longer afford silence. If I waited, Andrew's life would slip through my fingers like water. I called Patrick Doyle first. My voice was low, heavy with the weight of secrets. "Patrick, I need to make changes to my will," I told him, each word deliberate. He didn't ask why. Perhaps he already knew. Within hours, he was at my house files and fountain pen in hand. As we spoke in the living room, I noticed Sophia moving in and out of the hallway, a tray of fruit in her hands. Her steps faltered when Patrick said aloud, "Mrs. Hale and Hale, if you truly wish to leave 80% of your estate to the Community Health Foundation, I'll begin drafting immediately." I caught the flicker in her eyes before she turned away. She had heard every word. That night, I could barely sleep. I tossed in bed, Boston sirens echoing in the distance, my chest tight with dread. By dawn, I knew I needed more than legal maneuvers. I needed protection and proof. There was only one man I trusted for that, David O'Connor, Boston's police chief, and once my late husband's closest friend. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but when he heard the tremor in my voice, he came without hesitation. We sat in my study, the curtains drawn. I told him everything, the lunchbox, the lab results, Patrick's revelation, Emily's observations. His eyes darkened with each detail. When I finished, he leaned forward, his tone both firm and compassionate. "Margaret, we'll catch her. But you need to understand, people like Sophia don't confess easily. We need evidence she can't deny." I whispered. "She hides behind perfection. She'll never slip." David shook his head. "Everyone slips when they panic. so we'll make her panic." He proposed a plan: surveillance cameras hidden in the kitchen, tiny microphones tucked in vents, all legally authorized under a confidential investigation. Emily, sharp as ever, volunteered to manage the logistics, arranging for the technicians to arrive while Sophia was at a spa appointment. I watched them drill discreetly into corners, thread wires through cabinets, tuck devices behind flower arrangements. My home, once my sanctuary, was turning into a stage set for truth. When Sophia returned, she breezed through the door carrying shopping bags, her perfume filling the air. She kissed Andrew's cheek, asked about his day, and offered me a smile as if nothing in the world could be wrong. But I saw her eyes flick toward Patrick's briefcase on the side table, her jaw tighten, almost imperceptibly. That evening, while she hummed in the kitchen, I sat in the den with Emily, headphones crackling softly with the feed from the hidden mic. Every chop of the knife, every clang of the pan, every breath suddenly magnified, intimate, ominous. My heart pounded as I heard Sophia whisper into her phone, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't wait any longer. If she changes, it's over." I closed my eyes, tears stinging, fury rising. The mask was cracking, and for the first time I believed I might live long enough to see the truth laid bare. The night we chose to spring the trap, I felt my hands trembling as though they no longer belonged to me. David O'Connor had laid out every step with surgical precision, but my heart didn't understand strategy. It only knew fear. Fear that if anything went wrong, I might lose Andrew for real. Dinner was simple, deliberately so. Sophia prepared a creamy soup, her apron spotless, her smile calm as if she were painting the final stroke on her masterpiece. I watched her ladle a steaming bowl for Andrew, her hands steady, her eyes glinting with something cold. My son, bless him, played his part flawlessly. He took one sip, then another, and within minutes he began to cough. His face paled, his body shook, and he clutched his stomach, groaning, "Andrew." I cried, rushing to his side, though I knew this was all theater. Still, the sight of him collapsing onto the hardwood floor made my chest split open. Sophia rushed too, her voice dripping with practiced panic. "Oh my God, call an ambulance, hurry!" The ambulance was already waiting outside. Officers in disguise burst through the door, lifting Andrew onto a stretcher with convincing urgency. I followed, weeping, playing my role. Sophia's heels clicked frantically as she begged to ride along, but David stopped her firmly. Only his mother. At Harvard Medical Center, the stage was set. Andrew lay motionless on a hospital bed, his chest wired to machines that beeped in slow, deliberate rhythm. His skin was painted with a pallor so real I almost believed he was gone. I sat at his side, clutching his hand, tears rolling freely. For a moment, I forgot the plan and whispered, "Don't leave me, my boy." When Sophia arrived, she looked shattered. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her breath came in sobs. She threw herself over Andrew's body, her cries echoing down the sterile corridor. "It can't be. He was fine this morning." Her voice cracked, her shoulders shaking. For a heartbeat, she fooled even me. But then it came the slip we had been waiting for. She leaned in her lips, almost brushing Andrew's ear, and whispered, "Finally, it's all mine." The words sliced through the room like a knife. And then, as if God himself had timed it, Andrew's eyes snapped open. He sat up, pulling the oxygen mask from his face. "All yours." His voice was ice. Sophia staggered back, her scream filling the room. No, this isn't possible." The door slammed open. David and 2 officers stormed in, cameras rolling. He held up a tablet and pressed play. The footage from our kitchen filled the screen, Sophia sprinkling white powder into the soup, her face calm, methodical. Her knees buckled. "It's not what it looks like," she gasped. "It was just seasoning." But the evidence was merciless. David's voice was iron. "You're under arrest for attempted murder." I stood frozen, torn between fury and grief. This woman whom I had once called daughter had just watched her world collapse. And I had just watched my son rise from the grave to claim back his life. Sophia's scream still echoed in my ears as the officers pulled her away from Andrew's hospital bed. Her face was pale, her perfect mask shattered. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. Instead, all I felt was exhaustion, the weight of betrayal pressing into my chest. But the storm wasn't over. Not yet. In the sterile interrogation room under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Sophia sat trembling, her wrists cuffed to the metal table. I watched through the one-way glass, Andrew beside me, his jaw clenched tight. David entered his presence, calm but unyielding. "Sophia Hale," he said, "you've been caught on camera. You can either cooperate or face the full weight of attempted murder charges." At first she denied everything, her voice high brittle, like glass about to shatter. It was salt. Just salt. But when David played the footage again, slowed frame by frame, the facade crumbled. Her shoulders sagged. Her lips trembled, and then she blurted out words that made my blood run cold. I didn't do this alone. I was forced. Andrew's fists tightened on the armrest. I felt his rage, his disbelief like heat radiating from him. Forced. Who could she possibly mean? David's eyes narrowed. Who helped you? Her tears came in torrents, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Victor Kane," she whispered. "He promised me everything. He said once Andrew was gone, I'd be the queen of Hale Pharmaceuticals. He said he'd protect me." The name struck me like lightning. Victor Kane, my rival. The vulture circling our company for years, a man whose empire was built on exploitation and manipulation. And now to know he had slithered into my family, into my home through Sophia, it was almost too much to bear. David didn't flinch. "Do you have proof of this alliance?" Before Sophia could answer, Emily appeared beside us in the observation room, clutching a slim black folder. Her eyes met mine, steady and resolute. "Mrs. Hale," she said, "I've been keeping track." She opened the folder to reveal photographs, grainy but damning. Sophia and Victor together at a downtown restaurant, heads bent close in whispered conversation. Receipts for dinners paid in cash. A recording on a USB drive where Sophia's voice murmured, "Victor, once it's done, you promised I'd have everything." I looked at Emily, stunned. "You knew." "I suspected," she said quietly. "And I couldn't stand by, not when Andrew's life was at stake. The gratitude I felt nearly brought me to my knees." Inside the interrogation room, David laid the evidence before Sophia. Her sobs turned desperate. "He used me. He said it was the only way. I never wanted this." But her words rang hollow. The photos, the recordings, the money trail, it was all there. The truth was undeniable. Andrew turned to me, his voice hoarse. "Mom, he was behind it all. Kane, he tried to kill me through her." I placed my hand over his, my own shaking. "Then we'll face him. Together. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about justice." The moment Sophia uttered Victor Kane's name, the dominoes began to fall. Within 48 hours, the police executed warrants and the story broke across every news outlet in Boston. Headlines screamed pharma heir targeted, in poison plot socialite, and tycoon arrested. I watched it all unfold from my living room, the television flashing images of Sophia in handcuffs, her once perfect hair disheveled, her eyes swollen from tears. Beside her, Victor Kane was led out of his sleek high-rise, his trademark smirk, gone, replaced with the hollow stare of a man who had finally lost control. For years, he had haunted my industry like a predator circling wounded prey. Now he was shackled, not powerful, but pitiful. The city buzzed with shock. Business colleagues called me, their voices hushed as if speaking too loudly might summon the scandal into their own homes. Reporters camped outside my gate, hungry for a glimpse of the woman who had nearly lost everything. I ignored them all. My only focus was Andrew. Weeks passed. His body, though weakened, began to recover. The doctors said the traces of thallium were receding his liver, healing slowly but surely. I sat by his bedside, reading aloud the newspaper clippings I thought might amuse him, though more often than not, tears blurred the print. One afternoon, he placed his hand gently over mine. "Mom," he said, his voice steady, "we survived. Don't let this poison linger longer than it has to." Those words settled into me like medicine. He was right. If I let bitterness take root, then Sophia and Kane would still win even behind bars. So I made a decision. The foundation Patrick had once helped me imagine in secret, I would bring it to life. Not as a ploy, not as bait, but as a living memorial to resilience. The Hale Community Health Fund was born dedicated to funding medical research and providing care for families who, like mine, had faced the unthinkable. The launch drew cameras and microphones, but this time I didn't shy away. Standing at the podium, Andrew beside me with Emily at his shoulder, I felt a steadiness I hadn't known in months. My voice carried across the packed room, love and truth saved us, but greed and betrayal leave scars that will never fully fade. My family was nearly destroyed by someone I once welcomed as my own. Let our story be a warning, but also a promise, that from pain, something greater can rise. The crowd erupted in applause, though what moved me most was the way Emily's cheeks flushed as people called her a hero. She had been the quiet sentinel, the one who noticed what I wanted to overlook. Without her, Andrew might not have lived to see this day. Now, as I walk through my home, I still feel the shadows of what almost happened. Trust once broken never returns the same. But when Andrew looks at me alive, determined, I know the only thing stronger than betrayal is a mother's will to fight for her child. We carry our scars, but we carry them together, and that I have learned is enough. This story touched my heart deeply, and I'd love to hear how it touched yours. Please share your feelings in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what part of the story resonated most with you? Your voices make this community stronger. Don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Family Conflicts for more true-to-life stories, and join us in keeping these conversations alive.